So,
It's possible.
I love it.
yeah.
I want to see the next Sarah Monroe story too.
Right?
Yeah. Me too.
Up to chapter 1. Missed opportunity.
I want to know if that's a slideshow template.
You're correct. It is a slideshow template. And then one of my piano students recommended Canva.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Do they have?
It's like so much more customizable.
Do they have slides? Do they have sets of slides on Canva?
Yeah, they have templates and stuff. They got like, you could do animated GIFs. You could do stickers. So I'm gonna do that for the next
really
one.
nice. I've used that.
We have that in my account, right?
It's free though, isn't it? Like free account?
Yeah, some of them, some are free, and then
Oh.
for the super duper ones, you
That's the same with Slidesgo, like the premium.
they draw you in,
Right,
and then they're like, look, you want this super thing,
Right.
Give us your
and
money.
give us some money.
Yeah, one time I did this movie project with this teacher, and she used Canva to make this video, and you could have like a shape with a video inside, like an oblong weird shape,
Huh.
like a Teletubby stomach.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do like a heart
Really
shape.
cool. Yeah.
That's fun. Fernanda's like, I know, I already done that before.
Because that's what we use in the office.
Ah.
Everything.
All right, that's the next one then.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I see that now.
Because the templates are just pre-prepared, you know.
Right, you just fill it in.
Stuff.
Right.
I'm so glad you guys are able to come.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming all this way. No, it's fine. I love your skirt.
Yeah, isn't that
So
I think
cute.
it came from Indonesia.
Wow.
I didn't go there and get it.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Now that you guys have your plates of food, I'm going to get started. So, welcome to Internship Experience at Children's National, a Sarah Monroe story. Should we, is that okay, the sound from the window? Is it affecting anything?
Is it okay?
Fernanda says it's fine. Okay, cool.
If you find it distracting, you can close it.
It's not, I like it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go over real quick what we're gonna go over today. So we're gonna talk about the internship roadmap. So where in the classes, internship, so on until you're a real music therapist, the internship lies, and then within the internship, what the stages are. Also about the site and population, so pediatric medical, interventions, specific music therapy interventions that we've used, supervision, so the hour weekly time you have with your supervisor, which I love. Internship life balance, I feel like I really need to hit that one home because it's a crazy time in life, but you got this. And tips and tricks. Oh, by the way, trigger warning, there's some eighth notes that have stems going the wrong way. I couldn't delete them still, just bear with us.
No, I think it's just upside down. The staff is just upside down.
I guess so.
That's
I
my
don't know,
theory.
but that one's fine. I don't know. So, when you enroll at Washington Adventist or any other program that has music therapy, we have the classes in practica, you get those credits. Then you have the application process for internship. So if you want to do national roster or university affiliated, you send in your transcripts, your resume, all of that requirements they have. Then you get the offer letter. And what should you do after that? Celebrate! You got the offer letter, so you should party. You deserve it. Okay, so internship is next. That's like the ultimate clinical training. It's practicum experiences to the max, full-time usually. Sometimes they offer part-time depending on where you go. Then you graduate, so what do you do after that? Party! And then some people study for their CBMT during internship, but some people wait till after. Then you pass it, and then in Maryland, you also need your licensure, but that's not as difficult as CBMT. It's mostly just give your money, do a background check, sign some papers. Then we have the application for your job, which is kind of similar to internship, just more official. Get that offer letter. What do you do after that?
Party.
Party! And then you're a real life music therapist, dream achieved, rolling in the dough. That's funny. Now within the internship context, we start with shadowing. So you follow the music therapist who is your supervisor around. Depending on the client population, sometimes it's hard to just shadow because if there's like a kid and you're some random stranger in the room, you're like, what are you doing here? And so you kind of have to interact a little bit. But mostly you are observing. And then for co-facilitating, it might start off as like, I'm just gonna lead this one song, and then over time, you'll have more songs to lead, or even telling your supervisor, hey, I want you to do sensory stimulation with this 1-year-old while I'll sing like nursery rhymes on the guitar. Eventually, you'll be independent and you manage your own caseload. And this will start off with leading full sessions on your own while your supervisor is like shadowing you. And then after sessions, they'll say, hey, I like you did this. Let's work on these things. But these phases can kind of like mesh. They're kind of fluid. So if you're in the independent world and you're like, man, I need some more ideas working with like 16-year-olds who don't like to talk to me, then you could shadow your supervisor who has clients with similar needs to get some more ideas and then go back to independent. Children's National Medical Center. This is a pediatric hospital in Washington, D.C. It's ranked number 5 of all pediatric hospitals in the country and number 1 for the NICU. It's, their philosophy is patient and family centered, so that's great. And then it's a teaching hospital, so when you're walking around the hallways, you see a lot of interns and externs and residents and all kinds of students there. So that's kind of nice. You're not just the only student wandering around figuring out how to get to an area, the cafeteria. Oh, and I also included, so I'm going to send this slide to everybody. So there's a link at the top, the fact sheet. So you can click on that. It is like way more information. I didn't want to flood you with it here. So the pediatric population, this internship is specifically in the Cancer and Blood Disorder Center. And the rest of the hospital has like all the other units, and there's other music therapists that follow those kids. But for the internship, it's just with the kids with hematological and oncological cancers, and also bone marrow transplants or stem cell transplants. So under hematology, we have kids mostly with sickle cell disease, and that's a disorder where the red blood cells are rigid and misshapen, so they could block arteries and blood vessels in your body and cause pain crises, which are no fun at all. So a lot of the kids who get admitted are there for pain management issues, and they could be there for maybe a week or so, depending on how bad their pain is and how much medications actually help treat it. They could also be there for acute chest syndrome, and that's when the blood vessels in the chest are blocked, and that has symptoms similar to pneumonia, and that could be life-threatening, so they have a little extra attention, close attention from the staff. For oncology, there's different kinds of cancers. So we have solid tumors, which are the masses that hopefully can be surgically removed, and a lot of these kids are still treated with radiation and chemotherapy. There's also blood cancers like leukemia, so that's kind of more spread through the body, and then neuro-oncology, so we have the brain cancers there too. And then treatment for these kids include like chemo and radiation and surgery sometimes too. And these kids usually stay longer than hematology because they have to stay through their treatment, or they could be admitted if they have like a fever. If they're outpatient and they get a fever, they have to come in to make sure it doesn't get worse because their immune systems are so suppressed from their treatments. And then we have bone marrow transplant. And the reason why this is included in the centers because a lot of the folks from hematology and oncology are able to get bone marrow transplant because stem cell, it's also known as stem cell transplant. It's for kids with like leukemia or sickle cell can get it, or other life-threatening diseases. And for that, they get stem cells from either their own bodies or a donor, usually like a matched sibling or a stranger who matches, and they get like a bag of cells that get infused through an IV into their bodies. And that has a whole set of like preparing the patients for it by going through chemo and radiation like the other patients, and then also monitoring them after transplant for all the symptoms. Huh? Oh, I was pushing the wrong button. Here's some research on just the pediatric side, not necessarily with music therapy. You could read through this more in detail on your own, but overall, a lot of the needs are psychosocial, not just medical. A lot of kids who come into the hospital have anxiety and depressive symptoms because it's not fun being in the hospital. You're not at school with your friends, you're not hanging out at home in your own room. There's lack of privacy and you're being poked and prodded all the time. Not a fun place to be, and that can manifest in different ways. That can, also lead to issues outside even after being discharged. So patient needs. In the hospital, we see a lot of procedural support. So that's when like kids are going through a procedure. And one of the most common ones we see are called port accesses. So these kids get a port surgically implanted on their bodies, and it directs the catheter straight into the heart. So instead of being poked all the time with the needle in the arm, they could just access it through there. And some kids are like, no problem going through getting stuck with the needle each time in that same spot. And other kids, they have needle phobia, absolute meltdown, and so music therapists will come in. And usually those are kind of the urgent ones. You get called like as the kid's walking from the waiting room to the access room. We need you, they're coming in now. And you're like, all right, you have to grab your guitar and your ocean drum and just get ready to help these kids out. A lot of pain management for the sickle cell folks, but also for oncology, because sometimes the treatment makes you feel kind of crummy and you get aches and pains. For physiological functions, we, like in the PICUs, the pediatric intensive care unit, sometimes the nurses want to be very careful that the patient's heart rate stays within a certain range, so we can use the tempo in our music to keep it there. So we can see the monitor and try to match it with that, or if it's going too high, try to bring it down. Things like that. So these are the other patient needs, and we'll go over them with the more hands-on experience stuff. Just a reminder, so even though we listed a bunch of needs and there's research supporting and sharing what patient needs are, each patient's so different, so you gotta make sure that you tailor interventions per individual. Thank you, Fernanda. And similarly, pain is experienced differently. So if someone's like, I'm in pain and someone else is also, like where in their body? Is it pulsing? Is it throbbing? Is it for hours, or is it just right now? Or do you have to deal with this your whole life? And like, what are your emotions attached to it? It's different per person there too. Music. Oh, I was supposed to ask you. Did you see it? Don't look. Okay. So with all that information I just put up on you, what are some goals you think music therapy can address in the pediatric setting? So what are some things you think we want to increase or decrease? Anxiety. Decrease, yes, don't increase that. Anything else you want to decrease so that kind of falls in line with anxiety?
Well, the heart rate.
Heart rate, yeah. If it's high up.
Yeah.
I'm refraining until students have a chance.
Because you have some ideas.
Yes. Pain.
Pain, we want to decrease that for sure. Yeah. What do we want to increase? And it's not just patients, there's families too. So you want to include the caregivers, parents, siblings, aunties, uncles.
Well, you want to increase comfort and familiarity.
Or like normalizing the hospital
Yeah,
setting.
normalizing.
Yeah.
Right. Bringing and also communication and connection.
That's beautiful.
How do you say that in a goal, connection? Because I was thinking that, but I don't know how to measure it.
You could say like family support or coping. You kind of coping is what's used a lot as like a broad one, and then within that you could say it's like communicating or having.
What about interactions?
Yeah, increasing interactions amongst family members. You could
You're
say
providing positive experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. B, did you want to share?
No,
Okay,
those
good.
were good.
You got it. So we have, for the little bitty kids, sometimes we do sensory stimulation because a lot of the kids, because of treatment and being stuck in the hospital, they regress with their developmental goals. So we want to do like eye movement stuff or reaching for things, those little milestones that they have in like the first year of life. Creative expression, self-esteem, self-control, positive experiences for families and interactions included in there. And then for decrease, like you guys said, fear, anxiety, pain, depression, and stress.
Also, I would say the sense of control is a pretty huge one.
Yeah.
Because they're just at the mercy of anything. And so if you give them a choice, even that is giving them a huge gift.
Right. And I noticed that in sessions too, where suddenly this kid is like boss or king or queen.
It's right, or when you're mirroring them, suddenly they're like, whoa, I go like this and you do that.
Yeah, you do.
That's pretty cool.
I have power over
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
That's true.
Empowering.
Yes. And here is some research to back up all of those things. So I put hearts next to a couple of my favorite ones. The first one I really like because they interviewed music therapists who work in the pediatric setting. And so there's like all this data on what kind of interventions they use, how many clients they try to see, what kind of stuff they do for bereavement support, like very practical things that you could use to check your own work and like, oh, does it fit into this or how does it compare? And then the systematic review is also nice because it's 429 pediatric patients who were surveyed, and they see how music therapy improved their sleep quality or blood pressure. All right, interventions. This is like the fun stuff. I mean, not that the other stuff wasn't fun, but now it's like the meat of it. So we talked about the 4 methods in class, like recreative, receptive, improv, and compositional. So they're going to be listed here. So recreative, some ideas are like singing familiar songs or playing instruments along with them. Receptive could be just instrumental or just voice or combination. Composition, so some of the things that we could do is acoustic. There's one patient who's a 10-year-old who took guitar lessons outside of the oncology unit, and so he would just play on just one guitar string, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, and I would write it down and then notate it, print it out, and then hand it to him at the next session. He's like, oh, I'm a real composer! And like, yes, you are. So that was like the acoustic notation version. And then for electronic, we use GarageBand a lot on the iPad because you could set it so it's just loops, and you could take turns choosing, well, first you let the patient choose a genre, so there's like R&B / hip-hop, country, rock, all the genres, and you could take even Chinese traditional, which was really fun because they have some cool instruments in there, even like the gong, and you could take turns doing loops and record it and do effects on it, and then share the song file so they could share it with their friends and be like, look, I'm a music producer now. So that's great. With or without lyrics, so some kids want to express using words and others are fine without. Improvisation, you could do instrumental or vocal or both. Non-referential, so just say, ready, set, go, when you start improvising, or let's pretend that we're having a conversation, or let's make a sound that's what you would represent your pain, and then when we change it to a softer one where it feels like the pain's going away, something to reflect an experience that they're dealing with. And then I added a fifth one, lessons. There's some kids there who want to learn piano or guitar or ukulele, and we'll do like it's not like the real lessons. It's not like traditional lessons that you see in schools where it's a long-term goal that's very gradual. It's more in the moment because it could just be one lesson that they'll ever have with you. So it's a lot of success focused by rote instead of by learning notation, and a lot of their preferred music is included in their session, in their lessons. And then I have a link here of songs that I've collected that we've used at this internship so far. And you'll have access to this, you can see it. And it's organized by age group and kind of by intervention approach. And I'm sure like each hospital has like a totally different set of music. Like I didn't know that I would have to learn Bones from Imagine Dragons necessarily, or all the Minecraft songs. So some of these are very like patient specific, and some of them I was like surprised that so many people want to do it. Like Umbrella from Rihanna is like a pretty old song at this point, especially if you're a kid, and there's so many kids who still love that song. So these are pretty neat.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
What is the bold ones?
Oh, the bold ones are the ones that have been used multiple times.
I see.
Good question, thank you, I forgot to say that. So, Baby Shark, obviously, like every day. Those are every day. I wonder if there's anything, yeah, I can't, oh yeah, okay. So that'll be available to you when I share the slides. Another goal that we have that's not really included in these, because it's more family focused, is the bereavement and legacy building. So some of the kids, they have a poor prognosis, and it's really difficult for these families to not only come to terms with that, but also balance like, well, should we try experimental treatments, and where do I place my hope in terms of how I want my child to live the life they have left here. So one of the things we do for bereavement and legacy building is heartbeat recordings. And this is a project that is collaborative with the music therapist and the patient and families, ideally, where we record the heartbeat using a digital stethoscope. And this one's like $500, so they're pretty expensive. And then this one's a Bluetooth one, so that's pretty neat. You don't need to listen to it. It goes directly, the heartbeat recording goes directly to whatever device you synced it up with. And we usually use GarageBand for this also. And you isolate the heartbeat, you find like a good clear sound that doesn't have like the beeping of the machines or people talking in the background, or even like you could hear their lungs too. So some of them have a setting where it could just isolate the heartbeat. So you could hear it very clearly and pretty rhythmically, because you're going to set it to music. You want like a good tempo. Depending on what the family needs, sometimes they just want like, I just want a piano version of a certain song, or sometimes the patient is still active and has enough energy to sing a favorite song. So in that case, the music therapist will get the heartbeat first, record themselves singing a song to that tempo, and then the patient will listen to that while they're singing on a microphone. So it'll still line up with their heartbeat. That's the ideal. You want the patient's voice in there too. So I'm going to give an example of a song that one of the patient's mother chose, and I can't share the heartbeat sound to protect privacy, but I will share at least the instrumental part. Let me set, I think my Bluetooth turned off, so let me try this real quick. Sorry, hold on.
Do you have like a microphone you plug into the iPad? Is that how you do the voice?
I think, oh, they bring a, for that one we use just a MacBook. So yeah, it's plugged in, microphone's
But it's
plugged
a
in.
separate microphone.
Yeah, it's like a little smaller, cuter version of this
Yeah.
one and more portable. Sorry, I'm gonna hook it up to Bluetooth real quick.
It's a microphone called Yeti that's really good. Or
Oh,
Snowball.
yes, I know. Yeah, you want.
Yeah.
How often have you done that, made a legacy recording?
I just finished my 4th one this past week.
Wow, so pretty often.
Yeah, but the ones, there's like 3 of them. Well, the first 2, I didn't know the patients at all because it was in my first week of internship and I didn't have like a whole lot to do when my supervisors had to meet patients privately, you know, for the more sensitive sessions.
Yeah.
So they just stuck me in a room with a computer and I just spent some hours on GarageBand. So I really got to learn like the minutia that's involved. And I'm like so happy to talk about that too if you have more questions about it because there's a lot involved and I love doing them. So yeah. I'm gonna see, it says it's connected. So thank you for your patience, folks. Oh, so this is a song that the mother chose, and I think it translates to my gift. Is that correct, Miss Tenny? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And this isn't them or anything. This is just a picture that was on the YouTube.
There's a GarageBand in schools?
This is just from YouTube. So this is the original song,
Oh.
and then she asked for a piano version of it.
Llegaste en el momento en el que no te esperaba y poco a poco a mi vida otro sentido le dabas como un regalo que bajó y con amor Dios me entregó sin conocerte yo ya te amaba eres tú mi regalo del cielo mi consentido lo más lindo.
So that's the original song. So we have to take that because she specifically requested for piano, no voice, and put it with the heartbeat. So you won't hear in this recording the heartbeat, but the quiet part, the silence in the beginning is the heartbeat first, so the listener can attune to it, and it'll go like tkun, 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 tkun. And that one's in 4, but the music's like in 12/8 or whatever, so it's shifted a little bit. There's a lot of customization involved. But here's the piano only part. And we sent this one like on Thursday, so this is the most recent one I worked on. Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go. Sorry. Oh. This is
Is that you playing piano?
Yeah, so this one's through the MIDI. So the keyboard is attached to the computer, and then I record it. And since it's MIDI, you can see each note by itself, so you could change the velocity, the sound of it, and the length of each one, and really make it like flowy.
I want to know how to do that.
We could do a workshop.
I can't make my piano do that, and I have all the tools.
I was gonna say we can have another workshop from
Let's
Sarah
do
Monroe.
a heartbeat recording workshop.
Yes.
That would be so much fun. Okay, just need $500 for the stethoscope.
Jacob wants to come.
So this is where the heartbeat would be sounding.
Is there volume control? Is that what that little line was? Oh, there.
Oh, it's just so this would be over the heart, the and you would hear that the whole way through.
Such a great choice of the accompaniment pattern. Sounds like a heartbeat.
Yeah, because the heartbeat was kind of like, it was a pretty,
Yeah.
you know, moving beat. So, and luckily the song was kind of perpetual too, so it matched. Sometimes the request and the heartbeat just don't sync it. I'll need to talk to them about other options. This one lined up nicely. There's this guy named Brian Shrek.
Brian Shrek.
You can find him on the Instagram. Is it Shrank? I thought it was Shrek because I was thinking.
Schre. Maybe there's not an N in there.
Because I remember just saying, oh, Shrek.
Sure.
Because that's how I remembered it.
If you look up Brian Shrek on Google, you'll find a lot, and there's actually a great CMTE that he just did through Music Therapy Ed, if you're interested for a CMTE in the future.
And they do use this with hospice and end of life as well, heartbeat recordings.
So sorry, I have to go pick up my son.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry
That's
to
okay.
miss the
Thank
rest
you
of
for
it.
being here for
Thank
part
you
of
so
it.
much.
Thank
So
you,
good to see
Wendy. So we're gonna shift gears to a lot more colors. What's in my cart? So I have a little cart that I roll around in the hallways, and each of these, when you get the file, you could click and buy them if you're so inclined. They're linked to sites. So we got hamster bells or bear bells, and you just hit the tops of their heads. And sometimes the kids, sometimes we play hide and seek with them. Sometimes if we want kids to like start reaching or like doing movement stuff, we'll position it a certain way. Triangle, you know what that is. Shakers. The frog thing where you hit this back, this little I haven't used it yet, but different shaped drums. There's this game called Geometry Dash. Have you guys heard of this?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a lot of preteens, like 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds love it because it's like a free game you can play on the browser. It's like a speed thing, and you have to try to jump over different shapes while the music is like kind of dance, techno, electronic stuff. So that's fun to play because I'm like, look, it's like real life Geometry Dash, and they kind of roll their eyes, but it's fine. We have shakers, or the bells that can wrap around your wrist or your legs if kids have difficulty grasping things. And I say kids, but the hospital sees patients all the way up to 22 years old. So I forgot to mention that earlier. So, but they're all kids to me. I feel like they're young. We have tambourines. We have lollipop drum. So a lot of percussion instruments. I like these glockenspiel bells because you could take them apart. Some kids having all 12 is just like, 8 is just too much because they're gonna like go crazy. So if you want to just have like 2 or 3, like maybe an F, a C, and a G to follow your chord patterns or something, it might be better too. Sometimes we stack them if we get bored of playing them. We have a frame drum, these little rattle bells, the rain stick we use a lot with the babies. Guitar by BFF with capo, if we're singing along too. My iPad also BFF, because the teenagers ask for all these songs that I don't know. And you gotta stay hydrated, everybody. Bring your water bottle. In this next one, these are the ones that we use the most. And the ocean drum. Ocean drum we use a lot for port accesses, because you could seeing all those beads inside is just so fascinating. And I think kids and even adults, when there's something that's see-through and things are moving on the other side, it's really cool stuff. So it grabs their attention. And all of these we have to clean sometimes before, but after every session to stay with the guidelines of infection control. And they have these wipes that kill literally everything. So we have to wear gloves and wipe all these instruments down. So sometimes we're limited on what we can bring in based on what we're willing to spend time cleaning afterwards. And then we also have instruments in storage. So for instance, like this giant tongue drum, it's like this big, but it makes really beautiful sounds. And I noticed that the teenagers kind of like that too. It has that meditative feel. We have the djembe, we have 2 different keyboards, and these are battery operated, so you don't have to plug them in, which is great. I also found one on the internet that's a foldable battery operated keyboard, so I'm putting that on my future professional wish list. These drums are great for adaptive instruments, so instead of having to grasp mallets and hitting a drum, there's just buttons you have to push, and these little sticks, the mallets just they spin, So you can't really set the tempo of the drum if you're playing it. It just goes like really, and it's really loud. So if you're in an area where it's a shared space with other patients, maybe not this one. Maybe bring like the wrist bells instead. But if they're in a private room, this is great because they could go to town on these. And we have a high one and a low one. Usually though they're playing both at the same time, and it's just lots of sounds. We have the little bells that's handheld. The chimes are also great for mobility issues because you just have to swipe it. And the chimes they have are really loud also. So it's like high reward, loud sounds for less or low activity. Kalimba, another one great for adaptive is the Q chord because you just have to swipe this part with your hand. It's touch sensitive. And then the therapist will have, I think it's major, minor, and then the dominant 7. So the music therapist will be in charge of like pressing which chord it's playing, and then the patient could just swipe it. It'll just follow whatever song you're singing. And you could change the setting. Sometimes it's pretty, it's like, and other times it's like a rock and roll sound. Castanets, thunder tube, which we've seen in the percussion drum circle we had with Professor Joplin. More bells, ukulele. We have like 1,000 ukuleles, so some of them are gifted to patients because they could play that at the hospital. Have you seen these before?
The Clatterpillar.
The Clatterpillar, isn't that a cute name? They like clatter. I don't know.
They're super sensory fun.
They are fun. And what a cute name. I just love it. And of course, boom whackers. I love boom whackers. They almost always end up being in a sword fight, but that's okay. So this is what a day in the life looks like, but each day is totally different. I think this example that I have maybe happened one day because each day is different depending on who you see and who needs procedural support and what meetings there are for like rounds and everything. But usually I try to get at the hospital at like 8:30. So what I do, because it's in DC and parking's limited, I'll drive to Wheaton and park there, and then metro to Brooklyn, and then they have a free shuttle that takes you to the hospital. So it's kind of a trek. It's like an hour one way, but then I'll just use that time to listen to music for patients. Consider that practicing. And then, so I get there and they have charts on the computer so you can see like, oh, how did this person that I saw last week, how did they do over the weekend, or are they still here? Maybe they got discharged because their blood count, they have these things called baking counts, so they check their blood to see if their immune system is good enough to be out in the real world. Like, did they make counts and they were discharged? That's great. And you could prioritize, like, oh, this person, it says, the nurse said that they were screaming this morning because they were in so much pain and kicked everyone out, but I know I have a good rapport with them. I'll try to see them, you know, after lunch today because they usually like to sleep in. So you could kind of map out what your day is going to look like. And then around 9:30, I check in with my supervisor. So my supervisor is Michael Pellegrino, and I'm saying his name because he's amazing. So if you ever bump into him in your music therapy world, as a real music therapist, he's a good guy. So I'll check in with him and be like, who are you seeing today? Are there patients that we see together that we want to see? What do you think if I do this with this patient? Kind of just bouncing off ideas and mapping out the day. And then these are, maybe I'll see patients, maybe I won't. Sometimes you knock on their door and they're like doing physical therapy right now and they don't need music to collaborate, or they're often radiation, so they're not even in their room. So who knows who you get to see. Sometimes there's a lot of strikeouts, and then you see like a patient that wasn't a high priority, but it's still good that you got to see them. Then there's lunch, and then more patients. On Tuesdays, there's psychosocial rounds. So this is where you get to sit in a room with psychologists, social workers, child life specialists, education specialists, and sometimes a couple nurses, and basically talk about the highest need kids and new kids who are admitted. And that's a lot of time where we get a lot of the referrals, because it's impossible for only 2 music therapists and an intern to see everyone there, so the patients we see are referral based. And that's usually by word of mouth, like a nurse saying, hey, this person could use your services. Like, okay, what's their name? Which room are they in? What support do they need? And then the end of the day, at least like an hour, I try to keep for just documentation, because you want to write the notes when it's still fresh in your head and you can get those details in. Oh, and then sprinkled throughout, I was like, what is this? Sprinkled throughout are, so between patients, there's like, I don't know, 5 minutes of just cleaning instruments. And you're like, huh, that was a cool session. Or like, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I gotta talk about that during supervision. So there's times where you could kind of reflect on what you're doing. And we bump into, like, child life specialists is usually the one I see a lot in the hallways, and we'll talk about a patient, like, oh, how was this person this week? Or I heard it was their birthday. Did they celebrate any way they could while they were here? So sessions themselves are just so different per individual. They could be, I think the shortest one, I said 20 minutes here, but maybe 3, because it was just checking in. It's like, do you want to do music? Not really. Do you want to chat? Okay, sure. How was your day? Like, that, we don't really count that as a session that we note or document on, but they could be super short. Or they could be longer, like 90 minutes, where we're working on, like, the loops on GarageBand. And one of the patients, she was a sickle cell patient, adolescent, in the bone marrow unit. And so she had to be there for a while because she had to be like conditioned and get the transplant and stay for monitoring. So we had this project. She likes to write like fiction work where we create music using GarageBand as like film scores for her stories. And there was one time where I went in and she was just like curled up in a ball, and I was like, you don't look like you're feeling that great. What do you want to do? Receptive stuff? Like, do you want me to come back later? And she's like, no, you can stay here. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, do you look like you want to do something relaxing? Maybe I'll play some piano for you, and or we could create relaxing stuff. And it ended up that we wrote battle music for one of the battle scenes in her stories, and it got so intense. There were drums and like dun 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 dun. There were trumpets. It went like the energy level from curled up in a ball in the dark room to sharing battle music with the nurses that came in to take vitals was just like a whole nother level. That was closer to 90 minutes. And then sometimes sometimes there's not even any music that much at all. Sometimes the kid's like, I don't want to play instruments. Like, oh, do you want to sing? No, I don't want to sing. It's like, oh, do you want me to leave and come back? No, I want you to stay. It's like, oh, what do you want to do? I want to play Uno. Okay. So we play Uno and then just have music in the background. We take turns picking Spotify, like songs on Spotify, and sharing that way. And I'm like, at least we did some kind of music. But I just consider those more rapport building. So it's not always very music heavy. Sometimes there's caregivers present and sometimes not. If they are present and they want to be active, they'll be like sitting next to the bedside, so it's very obvious. And other times they're just have headphones on doing their Zoom calls because they're working too. It's like life still goes on even if your kid's at the hospital. And sometimes they say, this is too much noise for me, I'm just gonna go for a walk and get some coffee and go to the garden or something. And we give them that space too. Some sessions are so much fun and goofball. Other ones are very hard, like the kids who are like younger and thinking, even if their prognosis is good, some kids think just being in the hospital means that they're automatically going to die, and having to process that and encouraging, like having hope and positivity even in these difficult moments. So some of them are kind of tricky. And sometimes we collaborate in sessions with other practitioners, like physical therapists. What's RT?
Recreation.
Oh, maybe.
Probably recreation.
Maybe. I think I meant to put AT for art therapy, because we do that more. I don't mean, yeah. It's social work and child life.
Do you work with OTs as well?
No.
You don't?
No. So that might be in different parts of the hospital, thinking, yeah. So here's an example session. I just want to put this in here because this patient's a 2-year-old. She was there for oncology. She was there, her parents would take turns being in the room with her. And usually the instruments I would bring is that glockenspiel that you can take apart, and the guitar and a shaker, so dad can be a part of the session too. And we would sing preferred songs, obviously the kids' nursery rhymes, but also this kid loved Spidey and his amazing friends. So that was one of the songs that we would sing. And I think the mom told me about this song, and then I spent that afternoon learning it, and then the next session in the same week, I sang it for this patient, and her face, so she's 2 years old, but nonverbal even though she used to be, but since she has a brain tumor and that affected her speech, and so did treatment, so she regressed in her speech development, but it's coming back gradually. But she's very expressive with her face, and so when I played this one, her face was like, who told you about my song? I didn't say you could play this song. And then for the second one, she's like, well, all right, I guess it's not so bad, whatever. And then by the third one, she was singing the wah-oh with me at the chorus, so that was kind of nice. So, and then for her sessions, the dad was very much involved, so sometimes we'll do a song, go to another one that this patient likes, and then I'll check in with dad, like, hey, did you sleep last night? Or did you want to step out and take a break, or how you doing? Fine. Okay, great. We'll go back to playing music together, and this was more like fun sessions. Another example is, this one was actually on Friday, and with a patient that I've never met before, but my supervisor thought I'd be a good fit for this person. And this is a 17-year-old patient with sickle cell who was admitted for a pain crisis, but her pain was pretty bad because none of the prescriptions were helping her pain at all. So it would just stay at the max pain level. So when I did check in, she was curled up in like a fetal position with her iPad, and she just like eyes closed and just like grimacing. And for those patients, it's kind of tricky because you don't really know what kind of support or communication they prefer. So for her, I just did go up closer. Like if this is the bed, I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Like you look like you're not doing that great. I'm with the music therapy team. I'm the intern. Would you like me to play some music for you? And for some music therapy sessions, for the initial one, I'll go into this whole thing of like, this is a free service offered by the hospital, and give all these reasons of like, this is a great way for to make your stay here at the hospital a little bit better, and here are some examples. But since she was in pain, it's like, let's just get right to it. Do you want music? I could give it to you. And she said yes to it, so I brought the piano because I heard from the person who referred her that she wanted to learn piano. And sometimes I'll offer if they want guided meditation or just listen to the music. So do you want to do like breathing work with me, or do you want to do mindfulness stuff where you could do the tension and release through your body, or do you want to do an imagination thing where you go to your favorite place? But she didn't look like she wanted to talk at all, so I just started playing piano for her. And for this patient, I try to match the tempo with her breathing. And at the beginning, it was like kind of like tight and short, shallow breaths. And then through the session, she fell asleep a couple times, and I tried to like sneak out quietly, but she woke up at some point, and I just told her, I'll come back next week. But I'll play this for you so you could kind of get an idea of music that I would use with teenagers. And I try to find like flowy pieces that sound good in different tempos depending on their breathing. I don't know if you guys know this one. It's called Good Days by SZA. It's like in the background of her singing, and it's kind of pretty. Is the keyboard turned off? Oh, it's turned on.
Did you have to notate it, or did you find this?
So I have a subscription to MuseScore, and so I could just find it on there. Yeah, but this one actually came across because one of my piano students wanted to learn it, so I just knew about it. So sometimes I use stuff I learned in my lessons to bring into the hospital. frantically look for another one and try to ease it into it so there's not a break. And she's like, wakes up from her relaxing mood. So I'm gonna keep her in that space as long as possible. All right. Now that you know what supplies you had, you saw what's in the cart, you saw what's in storage, you kind of see what some sessions look like and some ideas for goals. Now it's your turn to do some work. Cue drum roll. Intervention roulette. Woohoo! So this is kind of fun. I actually set this up for a supervision that I had because I was talking to Michael and I was like, I honestly go in and I know what needs to be done, but my brain is blank and I don't even know what to do. So here's an intervention roulette thing. So this is randomized. And there's a button there that Steve is working on. You see where it says mix? Where you could press and it'll randomize it for you. So when you are working at your internship, you could change the info here to match the clients that you see and use this for yourself. So we could just pick like the first, I don't really know a 3-year-old that uses TikTok, but who knows? You know, each family's different. But if we go through, let's pretend we have a 3-year-old who's in for leukemia and her goal is to relax. Maybe she's just like so intense being in the hospital environment, and her activity is low. Well, this one kind of doesn't work. Let me pick a different one. Take 2. Let's say that her goal is actually, I'm going to change it. Family. That makes more sense. And usually 3-year-olds' activity is high. So let's say high. And she likes Disney. I changed it. That's cheating, I know, but it's fine. So now we have to think. This is information we have, either from when you first walked in or someone told you, hey, all she does is watch Frozen videos. What's something that you would do to help reach family goals with a 3-year-old who loves Disney and is ready to be active?
Is the parent in the room?
Yes.
Okay, well you could have them sing together, like the two girls about the snowman or something.
Oh, like Elsa and Anna, do you
Yeah.
want to build a snowman? I love that. Especially if it was with the dad.
Yes.
That would be
That would
perfect.
be so sweet.
Yes, and you could use like the shaker as a microphone and take turns. That's a lot of fun. Cool. Let's do another one. 11-year-old, so like early middle school. They're there for a solid tumor, so they're in the oncology unit. They're referred for creative expression. They kind of are into music therapy, not a whole lot. They're going to give it a try. They're medium level activity. And they like classical music and film music. For creative expression. And let's say they have a little bit of music background, because they could appreciate the classics. Dr. B?
If nobody else has something they want to say, I think I would do some loop stuff with that
That's perfect.
child because they're working on creative expression. They have some music background, and they're 11, so that's like just a catchy thing to use. With
Yes, the iPad is very popular with 11-year-olds, and they probably have their own, so you don't even have to use the hospital iPad. You could use theirs, so then they could keep working on it after you leave. And then a lot of the kids, when they see that because they have iPads, because they're watching their videos and stuff, but when you open up GarageBand, like, have you done GarageBand before? It's like, yeah, I've done it. It's like, oh, okay, cool, well, let me show you what we can do. Usually they're like, dang, I didn't know you could do all this in GarageBand, and then their mind's kind of blown, and you're like, yeah, I taught you something. Let's do one of the lower bottom ones. Let's do the 17-year-old who's there for sickle cell, so probably a pain crisis. And one of their goals is to have better interactions with family, because sometimes if you're in pain and you're a teenager, when it's already like an intense time against parents, when you're in pain it can exacerbate that. So luckily their activity level is high, so that's nice, because usually that's not the case with teenagers. And they like hip hop. What are some things we can do there to incorporate the family? So one idea is drums, because hip hop is very percussive, and we could do like a drum circle with the family. You could make it very structured at first, like I do something, you copy, just like Professor Joplin did. Or you could assign like different rhythms to each person, or if they like to do their own raps, they could take turns doing a phrase or a chant or a rap above the percussion that you do. There's different ways you could incorporate it. So this is kind of fun to get the intervention juices going.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you ever do a songwriting intervention with the family involved? Or not, or there's not?
I've
that
only
much
done
opportunity?
improvisation with family, but I'm sure. Oh, just kidding. We did do a songwriting with the guitar kid who we composed it, and the dad said, let's do lyrics, but the lyrics were just cha cha cha. So I feel like that's the very minimum. Because it's like guitar, dun dun, and then the dad goes cha cha cha, dun dun, cha cha cha. But yeah, that would be fun to do, like a theme song for the family. And then they could play that or sing that when they do the bell ringing, because after a kid goes through treatment, and or after a bone marrow transplant, if it's been like 100 days and that means like it's in their system, they're good to go, they could ring the bell in the hallway to celebrate, and they could sing that in the background or something.
Yeah.
Make it more meaningful. So we're running short on time, so I'm kind of going to rush through a little bit of these guys. Yeah, so supervision is an hour a week with your supervisor, and this is such an important time to really go deep into your experience with somebody who can guide you and give you constructive feedback. I encourage everyone to advocate for yourself because nobody else is. So you got to do it for yourself and reach out and express your needs when you need to. Sometimes supervision can feel like it wants to be therapy, so I recommend being careful there because it's still a professional setting. And if you want to go more personal or in a therapeutic route, find that in other ways, in other services outside of the supervision setting. These are some things you could do during supervision. So the intervention roulette was one of the things we did. Processing sessions and counter-transference, touch base on your progress, map out what the next few weeks will look like, things like that. Oh, and ask 1,000 questions. And also supervision could be used to help work on your resume and interview skills for when you apply for a music therapy job too, that still counts. And then for internship life balance, this is just good in general. There's just so much going on during internship. It's pretty exhausting, and you're kind of tested all the time on what you know, what you can handle. So I recommend taking a lot of time for yourself to breathe, process things, label the feelings you're feeling, reach out to people, stay hydrated, have fun when you can, things like that. And organize. That helps a lot if you map out what you need to get done and prioritize. And then tips and tricks. Depending on your internship, sometimes they offer a stipend, sometimes they don't. There's some costs that you don't really think about until you're doing it, transportation costs money. Those are things that I have to consider. It would help to plan ahead of time so you're not stressing out in the moment because you have so much already to think about during internship. During breaks, don't work. It's a break. So when you said, during my lunch hour, I'm not going to do any work, don't do any work. Feel the feels as part of growth. Reach out to friends, share experiences. I noticed that during this time it's kind of fun with my family and friends too to talk about things we never talked about before. So it's fun to hear oh, I didn't know that my friend would be so emotional about me bringing this thing up, or I didn't know you had this experience with a cousin or something like that. There's all these different ways you could strengthen the relationships you already have. Be nice to yourself. There's a lot of times when you're what am I doing? You're learning, that's what you're doing. So give yourself love, give yourself grace. And be you, because you're super awesome and you're gonna touch people's lives through the work you do like no one else can, because there's no one like you. So I encourage you to stay true to yourself, process, hydrate, get your rest. And that's it. Oh, take note of your support systems, especially the professors here. They're all incredible. You could also reach out to music therapists on the Facebook and music therapy interns. I found a few music therapy interns in Texas who are starting at the same time I did at a pediatric hospital, and we're kind of overworked so we don't talk to each other, but in the first week we were saying like how cool it was. So that's like something you could throw into your options for support systems. Thank you. That was my presentation. If you have any questions, you could ask now or huh?
Yeah, I can
Oh, the light.
I think we have to, we'll stop the presentation formally now because
Okay.
another class has to come in, but
Oh,
thank you so
thank
much,
you.
Sarah.
Thank you for
Great.
coming. I know it was a lot of info, so if
Wonderful.
questions pop up, just reach out. Don't be shy.
Thank you so much.
It's recorded so we can go
Yes,
back and watch.
go refer to it again.
And I'll share the slides with everybody.
Thank you, that's so nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Regarding the food, if you would like to take a sandwich with you for later, you may. Because there's a lot back there, and then I'll take the rest home. We'll eat them too. But if you want to take an extra sandwich, please
It's
do.
good. It's good.
They're good, right? I know the bread's.
Just a reminder for